Whoa. Oh my goodness. Welcome. Welcome to Shantae J Presents Let's Talk Life. Today we're going to talk about loss and grief. And I'm your girl, Shantae J, speaker, trainer, impact coach. That's me. And this conversation today is really going to be focused on what it means to, experience loss and also grief. And so today I'll be talking to you through pain, confusion, loneliness, regret, trauma, healing, acceptance, transformation, and growth. The best part about this, though, is that it's from my experience. So not from anyone else's, mine. And I'm no expert. I am kind of an expert on my own life, though, right? So today will be about a conversation, and I would love to, whomever joins, be able to ask questions, and let's have a dialogue about life. So the three things I'm going to talk about today has everything to do with loss and grief in three different areas. One, someone passing away. So a loved one, them transitioning. The second one is relationship and intimate. So a friendship, a family member, some type of ship that broke up, and kind of going through that process. And then finally talking about a loss of sense of self. Yeah, we know about that, right? So this conversation is really focused on those three areas when it comes to loss and grief. And just want to shout you out right now for watching, because it's very important, especially during this time. The holiday season, things are really heavy for people. And it comes to a point in life where we got to talk about it, right? And so Let's Talk Life is the opportunity to talk about it. And especially the fact that self-care is bae. The first thing I want to talk about is the loss of a loved one. And this is very near and dear to my heart, because I think about, so many people who have lost someone close to them. And so if you're watching this and there's someone that comes to mind, as soon as I say that, go ahead and acknowledge them. Take your time. Breathe in. And have that moment. Because it's real. When we think about loss and losing someone that we love, there is something that changes for us, especially when that person is close to us and there's a relationship that happened between you and that person. For me, I think about when I first lost someone close to me. That person actually was my cousin, Derek. And the thing about Derek's passing was that it was something that was unexpected and impacted my sister and I in a way that changed the game. And the changing of the game is because we grew up together, right? We grew up together. We got in trouble together. I got him in trouble more than anything with my dad. And it hurt. Because what happened to him was unfair. His life was cut short by someone else. And he was murdered. And so experiencing that at such a young age was definitely something that was game-changing for me. That was my favorite cousin. Like, that was the homie. Like, we grew up together. And it really shook me in a way that I never really dealt with it at the time, but I knew it hurt. And when I think about the idea of losing someone close to you at a young age, sometimes it hits, sometimes it doesn't. But I will tell you that 5 years ago, when my siblings and I lost our mom, that changed the game. And not in a way to, for us to be sad, but in a way to acknowledge that our life literally is happening, right? And so, in 2 days, we'll be, my siblings and I will be, celebrating that transition. And that's the conversation I want to talk about in this particular area as it relates to the loss of someone. That transition of someone close to you and grieving that. Very heavy, right? Something that has you thinking in your mind around, how do you handle that? How do you? In my experience, when I lost my mom, it was something that shook us. It changed the game. It shook us. The transition happened and things were different. But do you deal with that? Do you really take the time to think about how that impacts you? Do you rush through it? I'm going to share with you a little bit about what I did, right? So I remember in losing my mom, it was, something that definitely hit my family and I. And I was thinking, like, what do people do? And what I did was I asked people that I know and at the time knew who had lost someone close to them. Like, how do you grieve? How do you prepare? How do you do things? And so what I do is I celebrate. And knowing that it hurts and it's something that is a very heavy topic, and it's something that kind of like, for me personally, when I think about loss and grief and losing someone close to you and that transition of them passing away, it's like, I just wanted more time. I just wanted to spend more time with them. And then there's a sense of regret. And so I want to take this time to offer you an opportunity to forgive yourself. Yeah, you. Forgive yourself for all the things you wish you could have done that didn't happen. For that person that was close to you or still is close to you, they know. Allow yourself the opportunity to hold on to the memories, to celebrate them. Something that I do is I journal. And my journaling, of course, ranges. Like, I'll wake up in the morning, I'm feeling in the mood, and then I'll, write some reflection down. When it's around the time of kind of the holiday season, it gets a little heavy. And normally what I'll do is I'll look at photos, I'll look at videos, and I remember through, even on Facebook, I'll write, posts about my mom. And it's very therapeutic because there's another community that's there who's able to also experience what it is that I'm celebrating, and that's my mother. And so my offer to you in this particular area and talking about losing someone is find your thing to celebrate them. Celebrate their life, celebrate your time with them, find your thing. Like I said, my thing is journaling, reflecting, looking at photos and videos, and it allows me to acknowledge the time that we had, but it doesn't take away from the present. And again, I'm not an expert, so I'm just sharing with you a little bit, not all of it, but a little bit of what happens for me when I'm thinking about my mom, Marlene Edwards, and during the time with her, really what that meant for me. And so during this time of grieving and loss, it's something that, of course, impacts us on levels where it's the mental, it's emotional, levels to this. You deserve to heal. And I'm not rushing you. I want to suggest and support you in thinking about how does that work? Because you'll never forget. But how are you holding their memory? How are you acknowledging them? How are you being excited about them? How are you celebrating them? What is happening? And if you don't want to do that, that's okay too. Choose what works for you though. And so the next thing I want to talk about is, again, I'm not an expert, just talking about my experiences, is the loss of a relationship. I don't know if you've ever experienced this conversation with yourself when you either, lose a relationship with someone intimate and or a friendship. And this ship can also be with family, and there's some type of break. Like there's something that happens where you just break with each other and things change and things shift and life is just happening for you. What do you do? What do you do in those moments where there's a relationship that changes and no more is it the same, right? So what you used to do, how you used to rock, and it's not like the person has passed away, they're still here. How do you grieve? Well, in my experience, and in talking about this shortly, is that in thinking about exes and friendships, I remember how I'm the one who I will try to fix it. Yes, I'll try to fix it. And the reason why I want to try to fix it is because I don't know how to deal with it. Or through trying to deal with it and cope, I'm not really healing because I want to try to fix it. And I'm human. And so I've made mistakes and life happens. And in, past relationships, there's always something that happens for both parties. But for me, when I think about loss and grief, I never really thought about that until this year. Like, I never thought about the impact and the power of a relationship and experiencing that breakup. Experiencing the things that you used to do together or the conversations you used to have and how that no longer is a thing. And when I think about the friendships that I used to have, I remember at one point, how I would push. I would try to push past boundaries and want to reach out to them and continue to reach out to them and try to figure out what's going on with them. And then there would be no response. And my feelings would be hurt. And so in my way of dealing with this relationship breakup, I never really thought about the fact that this was me going through a grieving stage. Because I lost something that at one point had a flow, it had a rhythm. I could pick up the phone and could call and then they would pick up as well, right? And so I've had friendships where they just stop. And I would sit into this space about like, yo, what did I do? No, we're going to fix this. Let's fix this. And there's no fixing it. And that's powerful. And no matter which end you're on, right? If you're on the end of where you're the person who had to make the break, right? You had to, stop the friendship. Or you're on the other end where you're the person who received what happened when the friendship was over. Whichever side you're on, something happens or happened. And in my experience, I remember thinking about my fear of our reputation. Oh my God, so, what are they going to think about me now? Clearly they don't like me. They don't want to talk to me anymore. Like, so what's going to happen now? Like, what's the plan? I don't know. Like, I don't want them not like me. I was being selfish with myself. But in a way where I didn't allow myself the space to accept what happened and work to move forward. Like what I've experienced when it comes to loss and grief is this idea of acceptance. Okay, it happened. And then stepping forward in the reality, right? So kind of like moving yourself from it happened, I accept it, now here I am. And understanding that in that moment though, like in that moment that you get to be hurt, you get to be upset, you get to be frustrated. Like these are the emotions that we go through, even when talking about the first area of losing someone that you love, someone that passed away. You get to kick and scream, you get to like yell, you get to say, I miss you. And then there's these steps that you go through to be able to support what it is that's next for you. And that's the grief. And what I've experienced is that everyone grieves differently. Everyone has their own moments where they flow in a different way, What's your way? How have you handled losing relationships? Whether they were intimate, friendships, or even family, how have you handled that break? How have you handled that rhythm? How have you dealt with that? Did at one moment you feel like you were coping? And was it at one moment that you felt like you couldn't move forward? I did. And this is the thing about life, right? Life in these conversations around things that we don't want to talk about. I can't remember the last time, I actually made a conscious effort to reach out to a friend and say, hey, this is what's happening. Well, I do it now. But during those moments when I would lose a friendship, and I've lost plenty. And it's been one of those like lessons of me reflecting, wait, was it me? Like, was it my schedule? Like, what did I do wrong? What can I fix? Like, what's going on? And honestly, it happened. And I have to accept it happened. And then you move forward. You accept it. You heal. And if it comes back around, it does, but don't force yourself. Because you deserve to make sure that whatever that thing was happening in that relationship, again, whether intimate, a friendship, or a family ship, any type of ship, the rhythm broke. And it's okay. Time to accept and move forward. And in doing that, there's this thing that you have to connect to that relates to closure. Another thing, right? It's like a list of things in talking about loss and talking about grief. The importance of closure. The importance of ensuring that you are healing in some type of way. How do you heal? Like, how do you go through moments in your life where you allow yourself an opportunity to move forward? How do you do that? Have you ever done it? And if you have, what was that like for you? Is this a conversation that happens often where you're talking about loss, where you're talking about grieving a relationship or a friendship? Do you ever sit with yourself and allow yourself to accept what happened? Or are you truly allowing yourself the freedom, the space to be able to breathe and move forward? Closure. It's important. It's an opportunity for you to heal. It's an opportunity for you to grow. And you deserve it. And this conversation about life, because it happens, right? How many times have you thinking about how many friendships that just like broke up and there was no explanation? It just happened. How did you handle it? Or did you handle it? And if you're still handling it and you're trying to figure it out, stop. I'm going to just tell you now. Pause yourself. Allow yourself the opportunity to just be. Accept it, to move forward for closure. And then so my final thought, right, when it comes to loss and grief, is this loss of sense of self. Now, this is, woo, let me tell you about this. You know, that sense of you feeling like you don't know who you are. You double checking yourself and wondering, you know, where am I going? What's my purpose? I'm not who I used to be. You know, like this whole like thing happens for you. And if it hasn't happened for you, shout out. If it has, shout out. For me, it definitely has. And I'm finally getting into a rhythm of who I am. But what I realized, and, you know, shout out to Michelle and also shout out to my homie Frank, who I remember him talking about this a couple years ago, but the word becoming. And his approach in talking about becoming, it had a lot to do with the fact that you're always on a journey, right? So in comparison to, you know, a caterpillar and, you know, being in a cocoon and shedding and all that kind of stuff. And then, woo, now you're a butterfly. But kind of going through these processes all the time, right? There are stages in your life. There's levels to this, right? There's levels to what you experience. There's levels to what it is that you're doing in your life. And when it comes to yourself, because you reach a new level. Like, have you ever felt some type of way where you were just like, wow, I did that. Now, where am I going? Now, what's next? I remember 2 years ago. 2 years ago, it'll be 3 come March, when I had that moment and I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to leave my job. So what happened for me was this thing, right? I just was like, I was losing myself. I was literally feeling like I was like climbing up a rope and it was never moving. Like literally, I was never moving. Like I'm looking up and the rope is coming. I'm not moving. That was me losing myself. So it was during that time that, you know, I was trying to find my purpose within the organization. I was trying to find my purpose within life. I was just trying to find myself. And I didn't realize that I was in a relationship with everything that was going on. I didn't know that, because I was so caught up in who I am at the time and who I was at the time and who I was trying to be at the time. And I was all these different personalities at the time. I'm Gemini. Yeah, at the time. And so there were so many things happening and it was like, explosive, right? Yeah, at the time. At the time, I didn't understand that I was going through a process of my becoming stage, where my leveling up was shifting. I was seeing things differently, but I wasn't really seeing myself. I didn't know what I wanted. I questioned everything. I wondered, okay, am I going this way? Am I going that way? Okay, wait, let me get a coach. Let me talk to this person. Let me talk to, let me do this. Okay. I was doing the most. And in feeling that loss of self, it felt very uncomfortable, unstable, no security. I felt hopeless. And it wasn't fair. It wasn't. And so when you think about yourself, and if you've ever experienced you losing a sense of self, what was that like for you? How did you feel? What were you going through? What did it do to you? How did it impact you? For me, I think I went through a moment of depression. I definitely had to. At the time I wasn't seeing a therapist, so, but I felt different. Like I felt down. I didn't feel like I had a purpose. I woke up and I moved around, but it wasn't, I didn't feel inspired, right? I didn't feel inspired to inspire, right? And this inspiration for myself to be able to really step into this genuine piece of who I am. And it hurt. So if you've ever lost your sense of self, or you haven't experienced it, and it might happen at some point, or you have someone in your life who has, understand that it's okay, baby. It's okay. And I say it's okay because 1, you're human. 2, you're human. And 3, you're human. So it's going to happen. And when it happens, how do you deal with it? That lack of purpose, the idea of really wanting to find out, why am I here? Like going through this moment again, back on that rope. The rope is moving. I ain't. The rope is moving. I'm not. That feeling of fear. Here's how I handle it. I remember one time I looked in the mirror and I literally just stared at myself. And I cried. I cried because it was the first time I ever looked at myself and saw me. It was the first time I ever stepped into a space where, when I hesitated and doubted who I was and where I was going at that time, that I saw myself. And so that sense of self, that idea of losing who you are and really going through a process of just like hurt, it happens. And there's also the beauty in when you find who you are. Because you do deserve to grieve that part of you. People are like, I'm not who I used to be. I'm someone different. Yeah, you are. You've changed. You've upgraded. You've leveled up, right? But at some point, you lost that sense of self because you were searching. You were trying to figure out. You were trying to come up with things to do. You were trying to create things to do. You were trying to be able to become relevant and all of this other stuff that was happening because you lost that part of you. And I talk a lot about self. I talk a lot about self because I am growing for me. Letting go of unlimiting like beliefs, right? So allowing myself, not unlimiting, limiting beliefs, and allowing myself to shed so many things that I've allowed to just carry. That I reached that point in my life when I didn't know and recognize who I was and my purpose was because I was finally seeing myself. So that loss and that losing yourself, it can happen, and it hasn't, and it does. Don't beat yourself up. Give yourself time to grieve. Yeah. And again, I'm speaking from experience, and the grief that I'm talking about is allowing yourself to mourn who you were when you were there at that moment, and then start celebrating where you're going. Because that's what's on the other side. You're shedding that sense of self because you lost who you were. And here you are, baby. You are coming up. You are stepping into your greatness. You are seeing yourself for who you are. and where you're going, and it's beautiful. My lesson from that and the process of becoming still in this process is embracing it, being frustrated, allowing myself to get upset, fighting, that, I've been taking kickboxing, so I feel excited about that, whatever. But really just letting it go, forgiving, accepting what you had to do at the beginning, and then moving forward. Game changing. Seriously. And I can sit here and be excited about it because at one point I was sad. I was so sad. But it's about thinking about what tools and what things will support who you are and where you're going. So you get to lose your sense of self and you will find your way. I just sat in that for a second, right? Yeah. Through it all, you have to prioritize. From all the 3 things that I talked about today, prioritization is important. And it's actually putting you first. So in talking about loss and talking about grief and embracing things that shift in your life, there is that moment where you have to put yourself first. You have to take the time to heal. Losing someone and their transition, it hurts. Whether that person passes away or is no longer in your life because there was a break. And then finally losing yourself, it hurts. And those are 3 areas that are very near and dear to my heart because I think about it often. Like at some point in my life, I've lost someone. They passed away and they left this earth. And through these moments, I've learned to deal with it. But see, here's the thing, you gotta heal with it. I know it's kind of corny, but you get it, right? The same thing from a relationship that breaks. Again, intimate, friendship, family. Dealing with it is one thing. You're coping. Healing with it is the other part. You're growing. And then finally, that loss of sense of self. Losing yourself. I started thinking about Eminem. You gotta lose yourself in the moment. You own it. Okay. Never let it go. Hope. You only get one shot. Opportunity comes in a lifetime. Okay, sorry, I just had a moment. But no, the idea of just kind of, again, losing yourself and that sense of self, but understanding that instead of just dealing with it, hey girl, hey, you also need to heal with it. And that whole process of these 3 different areas: losing someone that's close to you, that they passed away. Secondly, losing someone in a relationship, break, an intimate person. And then finally, being able, losing your sense of self. These are things that happen in life, and if you're not accepting it and healing with it and prioritizing your self-care first, baby, bye. And I say it like that because your girl had to learn, V. I learn. I'm still learning. And the power of that prioritization, that self-prioritization, when you put yourself first, when you experience these traumatic situations, you put yourself first, that shift that happens, and you got to figure out, losing somebody that's close to you, that impact. When I lost my mama, it was something. It shifted who I am. I became something. I shifted who I like, the conversations that I was having. And I was like, yo, what is this? And you know what the loss did for me in losing my mom was that it made me realize, life is like, bam. So in thinking about for you, losing someone close to you, How are you going to prioritize your self-care? Where you're not just dealing with it, you're healing with it. You're allowing yourself to really acknowledge that, but then allow yourself to figure out that relationship that you have now. How are you celebrating them? How are you writing about them? How are you, supporting your own mental thoughts? What are you doing? I said, get a therapist. I have a therapist. Changing the game. And then secondly, when it comes down to a relationship, again, I'm repeating it because I want you to understand you have to heal with it, not just deal with it. You got to heal with it. And that growth is game changing, and you deserve to change the game in your life when you put yourself first, baby. And finally, that losing that sense of self. Cry, kick, scream, whatever you need to do, let it out and put yourself first. Allow yourself to step into this power of who you are and where you come from and how you show up. But at the end of the day, yes, you got to heal with it. And I'm not forcing you. I'm just providing you with my experiences of what it's like. And understanding that you deserve to put yourself first. And as hard as it may seem, as frustrating as it may be, whatever the case, whatever that is for you, heal with it. Because loss and grief happens often. Not just with people who pass away, not just in relationships, not just with their sense of self. It happens when things shift for us. We're losing something. We're losing a routine. Things are changing, and then we're grieving because we're like, what happened? Think about little kids. When something shifts for them and the way they act, they get into like these temper tantrums. That's us as grown-ups. Except we don't heal with it. We try to deal with it or not. And then we're coping, and it's not helpful, and it's not healthy. See, I'm getting all excited about it, clearly. But I want to just tell you that you got this. You matter. Your self-care matters. Your health matters. Your mental health matters. Your emotional health matters. Your spiritual well-being. You matter, baby. You matter. Seriously. And so talking about your life and talking about life and talking about topics like loss and grief, as frustrating as it may seem, as crazy as it may sound, it is dope. Let it out. Put yourself first. Self-care is bae. And it matters. Thank you for joining me today. We're having this moment to talk about loss, to talk about grief, to talk about you in the future or in the past or even in the present. But thank you for letting me share my story, share my experiences about what it's like to lose, to grieve, and to heal with it, baby, not just deal with it. I'm your girl, Shantae J. I love you. I see you, and you matter. Stay amazing.